The Stone and the Cry. The air of the colony marketplace was heavy that evening, thick with noise and anger. Merchants closed their stalls early, shutters rattling as shouts echoed across the street. In the center of the square, a small figure trembled, her thin arms covering her face. She was young, an alien girl, her skin pale silver under the harsh human sun, her hair tangled and dirty. Her clothes were torn rags, and dust clung to her bare feet. But none of this stopped the crowd. Hands grabbed stones from the ground. Voices spat out curses. "She is cursed," one man shouted. "She does not belong here," screamed another. A rock struck her shoulder. She winced, but made no sound. Another stone cut across her cheek, a thin line of blood marking her skin. Still she did not scream. Her lips pressed tight, as if crying out would only feed their hate. The crowd grew bolder. Children peered from behind their mothers, watching the alien girl stagger under the rain of stones. Someone laughed when she fell to her knees. Her arms shook, trying to shield her face, but the blows kept coming. Her silver eyes stared at the ground, and tears mixed with dust. She whispered something in her own language, words too soft for anyone to understand. But her tone was not anger, it was begging, pleading. The mob did not care. Then it happened. One stone flew faster than the others, sharp-edged, aimed straight for her head. Before it could hit, a figure stepped forward. The stone cracked against his shoulder, the sound sharp like breaking bone. The man staggered but did not fall. He turned slowly, his broad frame casting a shadow over the alien girl. The crowd fell into silence for a heartbeat, stunned. The man was human. Ordinary in appearance, rough clothes, scar across his jaw, eyes dark and steady. Yet in that moment, he was more than just another colonist. He unyielding. As a shield, he spread his arms wide, placing himself between the girl and the crowd. Another stone struck his back. He grunted but stood firm. Gasps rippled among the people, whispers rising. Why is he protecting her? Is he mad? The girl lifted her head slowly, her wide eyes shining with disbelief. She had never seen anyone stop the stones, never seen anyone stand for her. Blood ran down the man's arm, yet he did not step aside. He faced the crowd with a calm voice. "Enough," he said, his tone low but carrying weight. "Not another stone." But the crowd was not ready to stop. A woman shouted, "She is dangerous. She should be punished." Another man lifted his hand with another stone. The human did not move. Instead, he took a slow step forward, shielding the girl more completely. The stone was thrown. It hit him in the ribs. He staggered, but did not fall. His jaw clenched, his fists curled tight. Still, he spoke. "If you want blood, take mine." His words carried through the square like thunder. The alien girl gasped, her lips trembling. She tried to pull at his sleeve as if begging him to leave, but he stayed rooted like a wall. For the first time in her short life, someone had chosen to take her pain. The silence returned, heavy and tense. Eyes darted, no one sure what to do. The man's presence broke the rhythm of cruelty. The mob lost its certainty. Children stared in wide-eyed awe, seeing a human bleed for an alien. Even the most angry began to hesitate. One soldier from the patrol pushed through the crowd, his armor scraped as he walked, his weapon ready. "What is happening here?" he demanded. No one answered. All eyes stayed fixed on the man and the alien girl. The soldier frowned, looking at the stones scattered, the wounds on both human and alien. The girl pressed herself against the man's back, trembling. The man stood straight, blood staining his shirt, his breathing heavy, but his eyes did not break. He glared at the soldier, then back at the crowd. "She is under my protection now," he said. The words were simple, but they rang like a command. The crowd shifted uneasily, whispers like waves moving through them. Why was he protecting her? Who was this man? The alien girl's silver eyes filled with tears, her chest rising and falling with quick breaths. Her world had been nothing but cruelty, yet here was a human standing tall against all of it. The soldier stepped back, uncertain, his grip on his weapon loosening. The crowd lowered their stones, hands falling to their sides. The square was still, silent except for the girl's quiet sobs and the man's steady breathing. In that silence, the truth was clear. Something had changed. One human had stood against many, and the mob no longer knew what to believe. The girl whispered one broken word in her alien tongue, a word that meant thank you. The man glanced down at her, his face unreadable. He turned his gaze back to the people and waited, daring them to throw another stone. The square of the colony had never felt so heavy with tension, and everyone there knew this was only the beginning. The man who stood still. The market square still echoed with the silence left behind. No one dared move. No one dared lift another stone. The human stood tall, his back bloodied, his chest rising with slow, heavy breaths. The alien girl clung to the edge of his torn shirt, her silver eyes wide with disbelief. She had expected death, not rescue, and yet here he was, refusing to move. The soldier from the patrol cleared his throat, his voice uneasy. "You defy the crowd. You protect an outsider," he said. But the man's eyes did not waver. "She is under my shield," he repeated, calm and steady. Every word carried weight, not of power, but of conviction. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some called him mad, some called him traitor, yet not one of them stepped forward now. The stones lay forgotten at their feet. The man turned his head slightly, enough for the girl to see his face. His jaw was clenched, but his gaze was soft. "You are safe now," he whispered. The girl's lips parted, trembling. Safe. The word felt foreign, heavy, almost impossible. Her heart hammered in her chest. Her small hands shook as she held on to him. She could not understand why he would choose pain for her. No one ever had, not even her own kind when she had fallen behind. The soldier hesitated, then slowly lowered his weapon. Perhaps he sensed something greater than orders in the man's defiance. The crowd shifted, unease spreading like fire through dry grass. Their anger was crumbling, replaced by doubt. A single act of courage was undoing their cruelty. Finally, the man moved. He bent down, his hand gentle on the girl's shoulder. "Come with me," he said. She hesitated, her body weak, every bruise burning. But his tone carried no threat, only resolve. Slowly she rose, leaning against him, her knees barely holding her weight. The people stepped aside as he led her through the square. Eyes followed them, but no hand rose to stop them. Some looked away, ashamed of what they had done. Others glared, anger still simmering but chained by confusion. No one had expected a human to choose an alien over his own. The girl limped beside him, her breaths short and quick. Every step was a struggle, but she felt the warmth of his presence like a wall around her. For the first time, she was not alone. The evening sun bled across the colony rooftops, painting the streets in red and gold. It felt like the world itself was watching them. At the edge of the market, he paused, glancing back at the silent mob. "If she is guilty," he said in a low, steady voice, "then let her face truth, not stones." The words struck deep, shaming the watchers more than any weapon could. He turned and walked on, leading her into the narrow paths beyond the square. The girl spoke for the first time, her voice a fragile whisper. "Why?" she asked. Her accent was strange, her tongue struggling with the human word. He looked down at her but did not answer at once. Instead, he helped her over a broken step, his arm steadying her. Finally, he said, "Because no one else would." Those words sank into her like fire. No one else would. She bit her lip, her eyes stinging. Tears fell silently down her face, not from pain this time, but from something deeper. The crowd's stones had never broken her spirit, but this kindness almost did. Behind them, in the shadows of the street, unseen eyes watched. A figure slipped away, cloaked in darkness. The story of this moment was not finished. The colony would not forget a human who chose to shield an alien, and danger would not stay quiet for long. The man did not look back. His steps were steady, carrying both his own weight and hers. The girl leaned into him, each breath heavy with pain and confusion, but for the first time in her life, hope flickered in her chest, a fragile spark born in the heart of a human who refused to move, the shelter of humanity. The man's home was small, built from old metal walls and patched wood hidden on the edge of the colony. He pushed open the crooked door with his shoulder, guiding the alien girl inside. She stumbled as her weak legs failed, and he caught her before she could fall. For a moment, she froze in his arms, her body stiff with fear. Then she realized he was steady, not cruel. He lowered her gently onto a worn chair near the table. The room smelled of smoke and iron, tools scattered across the shelves. A dim light flickered, casting long shadows. She sat trembling, her hands clasped tight, her silver eyes darting around as if expecting traps. The man crouched down and opened a small box, pulling out strips of cloth and a bottle of clear liquid. He looked at her wounds, his brow tightening. "This will hurt," he said quietly. She nodded, though her voice would not come. When the liquid touched her cuts, she hissed, her hands gripping the edge of the chair. He worked carefully, wrapping the cloth around her arms, her shoulder, her cheek. Each touch was careful, slow, as if he feared breaking her fragile body. Her breathing slowed as she watched his face. There was no hatred there, no disgust, only patience. It was something she had never seen before. At last, she whispered, "Why do you help?" Her voice cracked, like a sound unused for too long. The man tied the last bandage and sat back, his eyes heavy with thought. He did not look at her as he answered, "Because no one should stand alone under stones." The words struck her heart, simple but heavy. Her lips trembled, tears burning behind her eyes. She remembered the colony square, the rain of stones, the laughter, the cruelty. Her people gone, her family lost, her name forgotten. No one had stood for her, until now. Her voice broke as she asked, "What if they come again?" The man raised his gaze, dark and steady. "Then they will find me standing still." The girl pressed her hands to her face, muffling her sobs. The sound filled the small house, soft but sharp. The man did not move. He let her weep. For her, tears were not weakness. They were survival. Every drop was a memory of what she had endured, and yet now each tear carried something new, hope. Outside, footsteps echoed faintly in the street. The man's head lifted, his hand moving slowly to the blade resting on the table. He listened, eyes narrowing, but the steps passed, fading into the distance. The girl did not notice, lost in the storm of her own grief. When she looked up again, her face wet and pale, she whispered, "They will call you traitor." The man gave a faint smile, tired but unbroken. "Let them call what they want," he said. Her eyes widened at his calm. He spoke as though their hatred weighed nothing against his choice. The night deepened, the dim light glowing weaker. The girl lay curled on the chair, exhaustion claiming her. The man covered her with a rough blanket. He sat nearby, sharpening his blade slowly, the rasp of steel against stone the only sound. His eyes stayed on the door, unblinking. He knew the colony would not forget. They would come again, and next time, words might not be enough. In her restless sleep, the alien girl whispered in her own tongue, a word soft as a sigh, a word that meant family. The man paused, the blade still in his hand. His eyes softened, though his face remained hard. He had not expected to feel this weight in his chest. It was not pity, it was something deeper, something that made him sit taller, grip the blade tighter. He would not let the stones fall on her again. Outside the home, in the far shadows, the same cloaked figure from the marketplace stood silent, watching the dim light through the cracks of the door. A faint smile curved under the hood. The human had made his choice, and now the colony would have to answer for it. The night carried the promise of danger, but inside the small house, for the first time, the alien girl slept without fear. Whispers of the town, morning light spread over the colony streets, painting the metal walls gold. But in every corner, whispers crawled like shadows. The story had already spread, faster than fire. A human stood for the alien girl, people murmured. Some spat in disgust. Others lowered their eyes in shame. The colony was divided, but all were watching. Inside his small home, the man poured water into a tin cup and set it before the girl. She blinked at it, uncertain, before sipping slowly. Her hands trembled as she held the cup, her eyes searching his face as if waiting for betrayal. But he only nodded, saying nothing. She had not known such silence before, silence without hate. Outside, 2 neighbors whispered at the gate. "Did you hear? He took her in," one hissed. "He will bring trouble on us all," the other muttered. Their voices carried through the thin walls. The girl flinched, clutching the cup tighter. She knew those whispers well. They always came before the stones. The man glanced toward the door, his jaw tightening. He placed his hand on her shoulder, steadying her shaking frame. "They can whisper all they want," he said. "You are safe here." She stared at him, her lips parting, the words almost impossible to believe. But the colony did not stay quiet. In the marketplace, merchants shook their heads as they told the story again and again. A guard spat on the ground, muttering that the human would answer to the council. Children repeated the tale with wide eyes, half in fear, half in wonder. Every telling changed the man's act into something greater, something dangerous. By evening, the girl could feel the pressure in the air, heavy like a storm before rain. She stood by the window, staring at the shadows gathering beyond the street. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "They will come." The man did not deny it. He simply adjusted the blade at his belt and said, "Then let them. He'll be destroyed because of me," she said, her voice breaking, but he shook his head. "Because of you. I remember what it means to stand." His words struck her like another shield, stronger than any wall. The night came, and with it, voices outside the house, soft at first, then sharper, louder. "Alien lover," they called. "Traitor," another voice shouted. The girl's heart pounded, her hands gripping the edge of the blanket. She wanted to run, to beg him to cast her out so he would be safe. But the man stood at the door, his shadow tall against the dim light, his voice cut through their jeers. "If courage frightens you, then stay in the dark." His tone was calm but firm, and for a moment the voices faltered. But not all were cowards. From the crowd, a shadowy figure stepped forward, the same one who had watched in silence before. This time, the hood was drawn lower, the voice cold. "You cannot hide her forever," the figure said. The man did not move, his eyes locked on the stranger. "Forever is not needed," he replied. "Only long enough to remind you all what humanity means." The words echoed into the night. The figure tilted their head, then melted back into the shadows. The crowd lingered, uneasy, before drifting away. The girl sank to her knees, her chest heaving with relief and fear. He closed the door and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "They will come again," she whispered. "Yes," he said, his eyes steady. "But so will I." The whispers of the town were no longer just whispers. They were warnings, threats, promises of storms to come. And in the small house on the edge of the colony, an alien girl and a human man sat side by side, knowing the world outside was ready to break them. But inside, for the first time, they had found a shield against it all, the truth revealed. The night was quiet after the crowd left, but silence felt heavy, not peaceful. The girl sat near the small fire, her silver eyes fixed on the flames. Her hands were tight together, knuckles white, as if holding a secret too sharp to release. The man watched her from across the room, sharpening his blade slowly. He could feel her unease, the way her shoulders shook with every breath. At last she spoke, her voice low and trembling. "They call me cursed," she whispered. "They are not wrong." The man frowned, setting the blade aside. He leaned forward, his dark eyes steady. "Tell me," he said simply. Her lips trembled, words catching in her throat. Then, like a dam breaking, her story poured out. "My family was hunted," she said. "They were accused of betrayal against the colony council. Her fingers dug into her arms as if the memory itself cut deeper than the stones ever had. They killed them all, every one, and left me alive. Her voice cracked, tears running down her face. I survived because I was too small to fight back, too weak to stand. The man's jaw tightened, but he did not interrupt. The firelight flickered across her face, across the lines of pain that had carved themselves into her young features. She continued. They said I was guilty too, guilty for being born of them. Her hands shook violently now. They said I carried their shame, their crime, their curse. Her voice rose and broke. So they threw stones until I could not walk, until I forgot my own name. The words filled the small house like a storm. The man felt each one strike deep, not against his body but against his spirit. He rose and crossed the room, kneeling before her. Her silver eyes lifted, blurred with tears. He placed his rough hand on her trembling ones. You were not guilty, he said firmly. They feared you because you reminded them of their cruelty. Her breath caught, her tears falling harder now. No one had spoken those words to her before. No one had said she was innocent. She pressed her forehead to his hand, her body shaking with grief. For the first time, her tears were not silent. They broke free, raw and unhidden. The sound filled the room, a cry of a soul carrying too much weight for too long. The man let her weep, his hand steady against hers. In that moment, he was not a savior or a fighter, he was simply present, and sometimes presence was more powerful than any weapon. When her sobs finally softened, she lifted her head again. Her voice was faint, almost broken. Why would you believe me? Why would you stand for me? The man met her gaze without hesitation. Because no one else did, he said, and because truth does not need many to stand, only one. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her heart burning with something she did not understand. Hope, fragile and trembling, was forming in the ashes of despair. She whispered in her own language, a word that meant brother, protector, the Q. Man did not understand the word, but he felt its weight. Something in his eyes softened, even as his jaw remained hard. Outside, footsteps echoed again, sharper this time, deliberate. The man stiffened, his hand moving to his blade. The girl froze, her breath caught in her chest. Through the cracks of the door, a faint shadow passed. The cloaked figure paused, listening, then moved on. The man's hand did not leave the blade until silence returned. The girl looked at him, fear and guilt still in her eyes. They will not stop, she said. They will hunt me until I am gone. The man shook his head, his voice steady. No, he said. They will hunt us, and they will learn what it means to fail. The fire cracked between them, sparks rising into the air. The girl held his words in her heart. Words she had never heard before, not a promise of safety, but a promise of defiance. The night stretched long, but for the first time, she was not alone with her past. The truth had been spoken, and the burden was no longer hers alone. Fire in the night. The night was heavy, the fire in the small hearth burning low. The alien girl slept curled on the chair, her breath soft, her face pale but calmer than before. The man sat near the door, blade resting across his knees, his eyes unblinking. He had not slept since the square, and he did not plan to. The silence outside was too sharp, like the pause before a storm. Then it came, the sound of footsteps, many this time, crunching over the dirt. Low voices whispered in the dark, laughter cold and cruel. The man's hand tightened on his blade. The girl stirred in her sleep, sensing the unease that filled the air. A thud struck against the wall, then another. The man rose quickly, pulling the girl to her feet. Wake, he whispered firmly. Her silver eyes blinked open in fear. Before she could ask, glass shattered, a jaw of burning oil tossed inside. Flames leapt up, climbing the walls in a roar. The girl screamed, stumbling back. The man grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the back door. But another crash sounded, the exit blocked by fire. Smoke curled thick and fast, stinging their eyes, filling their lungs. Outside, voices jeered, Burn the traitor! Burn the alien! The girl coughed, choking, tears streaking down her soot-stained face. Her small hands clawed at his arm, panic rising. The man crouched low, wrapping his coat around her head. "Breathe through this," he said, his voice calm though the heat scorched his skin. She obeyed, trembling, clutching the cloth to her mouth. The flames closed in, the roof groaning above them. The man's eyes darted across the room, searching. At the far wall, a window cracked, but not yet broken. He moved fast, lifting the girl in his arms despite the pain tearing at his back. He ran through the smoke, his shoulder slamming into the frame, glass shattered, sparks flying as they burst through. They tumbled into the dirt outside, coughing, gasping for breath. The girl clung to him, her body shaking violently. The crowd that had gathered stared in shock as he rose from the ground. Flames burned behind him, the house collapsing in sparks. But he did not let go of her, not even for a moment. "Stand back," one of the men shouted, holding a weapon. Others lifted stones again, their faces twisted with hate. The man stepped forward, his blade drawn now, his body shielding the girl completely. His voice rang out over the crackle of fire. "You call me traitor for saving the innocent." He lifted the blade higher. "Then call me traitor until your tongues burn." The mob hesitated, fear flickering in their eyes. They had seen him bleed for her. They had seen him walk through fire. Now he stood ready to face them all. The cloaked figure stepped forward from the shadows, silent and calm. The crowd parted as if the darkness itself had shape. The figure spoke, voice smooth and cutting. "You cannot win, human." The man's eyes burned in the glow of the flames. "Winning is not the point," he said. "Standing is." The alien girl pressed her forehead against his back, whispering through her trembling breath, "They will kill you." But he only straightened, his stance unbroken. "They will try," he answered. The fire roared behind them, painting the night in red and gold. The mob tightened their circle, stones and blades ready. Yet the human did not step aside, and the girl clung to him as if his shadow alone could shield her. The night air pulsed with danger, every heartbeat a drum of suspense. It was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a test of what one human's defiance could mean against the weight of a whole world. The last stand of mercy. The night burned red with fire, the small house collapsing into ash behind them. The man stood tall, blade in his hand, the alien girl pressed against his back. The mob circled closer, their faces twisted with hate, their stones heavy in their fists. Yet no one moved first. They all waited, as if unsure whether to strike a man who had walked through flames. The cloaked figure stepped forward, the crowd parting like water around a stone. The hood tilted, and two cold eyes glimmered in the firelight. "You cannot fight them all," the figure said softly. The man raised his chin, his blade steady. "I do not need to fight them all," he answered. "I only need to show them what it means to stand." The words rippled through the mob, striking deeper than any weapon. A few lowered their stones, doubt flickering in their eyes. The cloaked figure hissed, "Do not be fooled. She is a curse, and he is a traitor." But the crowd no longer moved as one. The story of the stones, the fire, the shield of a human body had shaken them. The alien girl trembled, her voice barely more than a breath. "They will kill you, and me too." The man glanced over his shoulder, his eyes steady on hers. "Then let them learn that mercy is stronger than fear," he said. Her tears burned her cheeks, yet her heart swelled. For the first time she saw herself not as cursed, but as worth saving. A man from the crowd stepped forward, his stone dropping from his hand. He looked at the girl, then at the man. "She was just a child," he muttered. Another voice rose from behind, uncertain but trembling. "Why should she pay for what was never her crime?" The mob shifted, the certainty of hatred breaking apart. One by one, stones fell from shaking hands, landing in the dirt with soft thuds. The cloaked figure's voice grew sharp, furious. "Fools! She will bring ruin. She must be destroyed." But the crowd did not lift their arms again. They stared at the humans standing bloodied and burned yet unbroken, and in their silence, the figure's power faltered. The man lowered his blade slowly, his voice carrying across the night. "You have seen her bleed. You have seen her suffer, yet still she lives." He pointed his blade at the ground, not at them. "You call her cursed, but it is not she who threw stones at a child." The words struck like lightning, shame flashing across faces. A heavy silence followed, deeper than before. The cloaked figure snarled, turning sharply to vanish into the dark. The danger was not gone, only hidden, but the mob stepped back, no longer united in hate, some Eve, and bowed their heads as the man carried the girl away from the flames, each step heavy yet filled with quiet defiance. The girl clung to him, whispering in her own tongue, a word that meant savior, shield, hope. He did not understand, but he felt its weight settle in his chest. For her, he had been more than a shield against stones. He had been the proof that humanity was not lost. By dawn, the smoke still rose from the ruins of the house. But in the hearts of the colony, something had changed. They had seen one human take the blows, one human stand where no one else dared, and the memory would not fade. The alien girl lifted her head as the sun broke over the horizon. Her silver eyes met his, filled with something new, not fear, not despair, but a fragile spark of belonging, and the man, tired and wounded, gave a faint smile. "Come," he said. "The world is still wide, and no stone will touch you while I stand." And so they walked together into the rising light, one carrying scars, the other carrying hope, both bound by a night of fire and mercy, a night that had turned cruelty into silence, and silence into change. The end. Enjoyed the story? Like it and subscribe for more.